Come get in and give a round of applause.
This is free beer.
This is free beer, free beer. You know, we do it up right here at the
It's like
Enterprise
sales
Sales
professionals, like Fight Club.
Meetup.
First rule.
I didn't tell you, but you know, later on we're bringing out the boxing ring.
Okay, all right. Excellent.
But it. There's nowhere to go with that.
Going off the rails real quick.
Whoa! Yeah, kind of like some of my sales meetings at Siebel, as I've shared before. I'll have to edit that off as well. It may offend a few folks. But yeah, I just want maybe just kick it off. Just share a little about yourself, maybe like your 30-second intro. And I always like to start off with one interesting thing that people might not know about you.
All right. So I'm Eli Murphy. Very nice to make all of your acquaintances. The biggest background, some of you know the Corporate Executive Board or have worked there. Just any other CEBers or former recovering CEBers in the room? All right. So I was there for many years, and the one thing most people don't know about me is I'm actually born and raised Washingtonian. Anyone else here from DC?
Wow.
Nice. Okay.
That is not that common.
Not that common, but this actually having 3 in a room of about 20 is pretty amazing.
Amazing.
Other end of the spectrum, not DC, Baltimore. So a little bit rougher around the edges. You'll probably hear that. At one time, believe it or not, I was a professional runner, and the reason, yeah, I know. It doesn't look like it now, does it? Yeah. And the reason I ended up at CEB, or Corporate Executive Board, is I shattered my leg trying to qualify for Olympic trials in the marathon. And that led to a professional career that gets me to talk to all you guys.
And have some beer.
And have some beer,
During
yeah.
the evening. And I do want to actually do a little bit of a shout out. C, who's been such a generous supporter and helper of making these events happen. You've done a few marathons.
I hold the record for the most number of New York City marathons for a female.
Really? Wow. Holy smokes!
20 years.
Wow. I think I did 4 and I'll never do one again.
But my knees feel it.
So we want to talk about this topic of challenger, right? And maybe as we start, one of the things that's kind of interesting is just the fact that a lot of deals seem to go in the nowhere zone. What I used to call as a sales manager, we hadn't forecasted what happened. And then you find out eventually it just kind of went into ether, no one won. Right? And so I just wanted to kind of put some context here, because what we're going to talk about today kind of addresses a lot of that. What's this disconnect? When you think you have all the information, you know, you've done the classic challenger, but you're not able to bring over the deal, and no one's actually gone there. So you want to maybe just lay out some, maybe the framework of what the challenger is to begin with, and then we can go kind of deeper and talk about some implications.
Sure. Familiarity levels with Challenger. I talked to a few of you, and JD, you talked to people. Are everyone familiar with the basics of Challenger? Lots of thumbs, some thumbs up.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So, no. Okay.
Okay. No. Okay. So at its simplest, it is addressing the question that, or it is one of the best things that we have ever seen that addresses this issue of we're not losing deals to other people, we're losing deals to no decision. Customers, it's not like someone else outsold us, they just didn't change. And it's because inaction is always easier than action. People don't like to change, don't like to do something, they're comfortable with the status quo. And so yeah, we come in, we pitch, someone else comes in and pitches, and they go, okay, this is interesting, that's cool, that's interesting, but like they're not uncomfortable with how things, they're not so uncomfortable with how things currently are that they decide to do anything differently, and the numbers are 60 to 75% of deals end in a no decision. People just didn't act. Sorry?
That large percentage.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it varies industry to industry, but 60 to 75 is a pretty safe range. So what Challenger came around and has done, and has certainly, you get a better success rate with Challenger than just sort of the old pitch, is come in and say, let me not try and sell you my product or my service or my solution, let me try and sell you on changing. let me show you how what it is you are doing currently is actually hurting you in more ways than you realize, or causing you to miss much more opportunity than you realize. And if I can get you to the point where the pain of the status quo is greater than the pain that you perceive of the change, you're much more likely to at least take some action. And then the nice thing is, if I'm the one who's led you there, now you're ready to change, I'm kind of the easy, obvious answer, because I'm right there in front of you and I'm the one who's brought you the information that has you thinking differently about your situation. So there is a little bit of danger of, okay, now I've pushed someone to change, they're going to go, why should I change to you? And now I've got a whole different battle to fight. But by being the one that helped them get to the point of realizing change, we are in a position to win better.
We actually realized the Challenger research started, so the sales research actually began with marketing the year before. So going into the teeth of the recession, so 06, 07, we found that there were very particular drivers of business-to-business customer loyalty. And when you actually drilled into that, the thing that was driving loyalty was the commercial or the sales experience. And if you actually drilled into the research at that time, it was a bunch of things that looked really non-salesy. So the idea of having like a market perspective, the idea of helping someone avoid mistakes, the idea of educating customers, and we were like, wow, that doesn't look like anything that we see in sales training. And so that led to the question, and the recession made it very stark. In the recession, there were companies and industries that were being wiped out and devastated, yet there were still some winners. And the question was, are there particular sales people that exhibit some of these traits, and exactly what are they? And can that be replicated? Like, what is behind this behavior that these, and it's high-performing salespeople, obviously, that exhibit this. And the idea that came out of Challenger was these salespeople, they can investigate, and they do their due diligence. And quite frankly, they do a lot of stuff kind of behind the scenes, outside of the typical relationships in marketing or with the market research. And they're gathering material to teach customers something they didn't know about themselves. Not about products, not about services, but the expectation was, and we all remember the classic evolution of solution sales, what keeps you up at night? Idiots like you. And then it was, and I got that. And then it was, we do business with companies like you all the time, and you tend to have this, and this. And that worked for a while. But then it was, yeah, but tell me something I don't know about me, not about you. And so that's where Challenger was really born, and that's how it's evolved.
It sounds like there's definitely a huge emphasis just on the messaging part.
Yes. Yeah.
There's an interesting survey we just did that asked, sorry, just take a minute, when we asked people about the quality of, scales 10 to 1 here, quality of their solution. Just show of hands, how many of you would give your solution, the thing that you sell, at least a 7 or 8 or 9? Interesting, okay.
Okay. Wow, come on, guys. All right, that's also part of the problem. All right. That's also part of the problem.
So, and that was normal. We saw some people who were like, it's not as good as it could be, and others who were like, it's a 10. Average was about an 8 for the solution. We then asked people, how good is, or it's the quality of your message, and the answer was about a 4. So this is sort of lost opportunity. We have this great product, we have this great service, we have this great solution, and the message that we use to tell the story of it out in the marketplace just isn't getting it done. So I kind of jumped in, I think, before you finished the question, but maybe premature, but this was really interesting and fascinating and tied very closely to what Challenger is, or why Challenger is as good as it is.
So, I guess following on that, think about the fact that the messaging is so critical. We always talk about this idea of bringing insights into our sales, but what does that really mean ultimately?
Yeah, there's using this here. The cool thing So we are, what we talked about a minute ago, and what Challenger teaches is you need to lead with some sort of a problem. You need to show customers that the status quo is so terrible that they cannot afford not to change. And that's absolutely critical. If you don't do that, you're dead in the water. This is the life after Challenger idea of this talk was, okay, great. I've convinced my customer that they need to change, but I could stand to lose a few pounds. I know I need to change to be healthy. I know what the solution is, go to the gym and eat more vegetables. And yet I don't do either of those things. So there's something else going on in the way people actually decide to do something. So we want them to do something. We want them to take some sort of an action. But what we now know is just because they have a problem is not enough for them to act. And this is where this idea of insight comes in, which is great. I'm going to do it partly because there's some problem that will be solved if I do it. But that's not quite enough. Why else do we take action? And it boils down to this idea of insights, or the other word we like to use is beliefs. We act because of what we believe. So certainly I believe I have a problem. Like I came here tonight. We came here tonight because I believed I could use my time. I believed I could get here without getting in an accident. I believed there was going to be beer and food, which I like. I believed Mark seemed like a nice guy. I believed I'd have company. There's a whole set of beliefs in my brain that made me go, yeah, this seems like a good idea. But if I believed, no, this is like, oh, Mark wants me to pay $10,000 to come speak to this group, or any money at all, I would have been like, no. Sorry, you guys are not.
I was able to ring a little bit. Yeah. I drive a hard car. In fact, I'm not going to pay anything, and you're going to feed me? Sweet. If I didn't believe that I could get here, like if I lived outside the Beltway and it was rush hour, like I wouldn't be here. So there's a set of beliefs that drive us to do anything. And sometimes they're conscious, sometimes they're unconscious. So certainly believing I have a problem is one of them, but it's not the only one. So this conversation, this idea of what are the insights or beliefs, if you look up to the dictionary definition of an insight, it is a new belief.
And belief is the positive. Also think of that in the sales conversation. Those are the objections of the customer you would have to overcome. Right? So salespeople, insights is a really fuzzy word. Like, what are you talking about? What would the customer need to believe to do the thing you want them to do? That's all it is. Those would be the objections. So that's the other way of phrasing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfectly where these come from. So if you're talking to a customer and they say, yeah, okay, I got this problem, but I can't afford to fix it. So you've got to overcome it. This is actually either affordable or it is worth the money, or you can find the money. Well, I believe it's going to be really disruptive and we can't afford disruption right now. No, actually, I can show you and help you believe this is incredibly easy and simple and non-disruptive. Well, I don't have the internal IT guys to manage this program you're talking about. Actually, we can do that for you. So what are those objections, the flip side of what are the beliefs that you need to plant in their brain? And then the fun part is the last piece, which is where do beliefs come from? Why do we believe what we believe?
Can I ask you, but if you can get someone to engage with you, isn't that like a good big step forward?
Oh,
the fact that
absolutely.
someone's willing to go back and forth with you
Yeah.
and speak about it, I think that means they're changeable. Because the other people won't even have the conversation.
Yeah.
That is so critical. 90% of sales presentations start with exactly what we were talking about earlier. Show up and throw up. But here's the deck. Who we are, what we do, map of the world, offices, diary of logos, clients that we have, our capabilities, how awesome we are, some testimonial quotes. You see it again and again and again. The idea of starting with the customer's problem immediately puts you in the 10% where that person goes, oh, wait a minute, they're actually talking to me. They're talking about me. That's so much more engaging than the classic, like, 30 minutes, 15 minutes about me.
Let me tell you, high-tech software company, founded in '97 by Josiah Genesis. We're great, right? 55 employees in the Dallas area. Is that good?
Sure.
Of course, if you're mugging old ladies in Dallas, it is.
Old ladies.
If you're trying to take over China, probably not.
Yeah, so so the engagement piece is critical, and that's, again, one of the great things about Challenger is when you come in and you can say, you've got a problem, and it's much more interesting and difficult than you realize, and I can show you some ways to think about it differently. People love talking about their problems. You ever go back through your Google search history. Be careful. But go back through your Google search history and strip out anything that is just pure entertainment. And every other search you did will be about you trying to find a solution to a problem you have. Mostly we ignore information because we have to. It's just coming at us too much. The statistics are crazy. It's like 5,000 or 6,000 sales and marketing messages that every single one of us is exposed to every single day. Your brain would explode if you actually tried to think about every single one of them.
And the default is to delete. So let's be totally honest. It feels good during the day to get into your email and just delete stuff. It's awesome. Delete or ignore. Delete or ignore. It feels good. That's the default.
So engaging, the things we engage on, all of us and our customers are just like us, is a problem we have. We actually, not only do we engage with it, we seek out information that helps us solve our problems. And so if you can start, as Challenger teaches, start with their problem, not that kind of slide, let me tell you about you, or let me tell you about me, you get exactly that back and forth. And then they're willing to talk to you about their, not so much talk about their beliefs, but
Just engage.
Engage.
That's exactly it.
But it just seems like we're so bad at it as sales and marketing organizations that we just get it wrong so often. Like the proverbial slide of NASCAR logos and all this stuff that's about us. Right? So who are we expecting to actually help us connect as sales professionals to those beliefs? Are we trying to come up with it ourselves, or is marketing involved? I mean, how are we getting to that conversation?
Like, who do you pitch within an organization if you're going out to pitch people to use your methodology? I don't mean, you know
Or
what I'm
whatever
saying?
the product might be.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, do you go after marketing or sales or both together? Because in a big company, it's a combined shtick.
Yep.
You know, and salespeople sort of have to go along with what the marketing materials are. They don't create the materials, and what.
This was interesting. I had some conversations with people just here talking about who, for those of you who are doing Challenger or trying to do Challenger or working, where do this exact question, where do we get the information we as a frontline salesperson? I know not everyone here is frontline, but either for the frontline salesperson, where are they getting the materials, the insights they're going to share with customers, the discussion about the problem, any help to tailor the message to different people if they're talking to a procurement person versus a finance person versus a legal person.
I'd even add for the people in sales leadership, do you actually know the message that your best people are taking to the market, to your customers? Chances are it is not what is in your marketing collateral. So even for sales and marketing leaders, what your best people are doing in front of clients and customers is probably very, very different than what you're giving.
Well, as I was telling you before, when I was trying to pitch out to investment and corporate banks at Siebel, I couldn't go in with the types of information that they were pitching, right? All the glossies, and I couldn't do it. I'd be thrown out. I'd lose all credibility. So I actually had to go rogue and create a whole bunch of my own stuff.
And that's the funny thing is you get these like, not to be kidding, any marketing people in the room?
A little too close to home?
That's like my timeline.
So
I was going to say that you actually, as a sales leader, know who your challengers are based on the fact that they aren't actually using the company.
And that was the worst part.
So the lone wolves and the challengers are absolutely often not using any collateral, period.
Yeah.
They're just having.
And oftentimes, the lone wolf and challengers are confused within the organization because internally they look the same. They're both a giant pain in the ass.
Yep.
For radically different reasons.
Yep.
For radically different reasons. The challenger's a pain because they don't understand why the company is getting in the way of delivering on the expectations that they promised to the customer.
Yep.
The lone wolf behaves the same way, except they care about one thing and one thing only, and that's their wallet. They care about their wallet. They call it out their bonus, and that's it. That's all they care about. And that's a really difficult thing because it is. It's hard. One of the hardest things that we found is it's hard to get high-performing salespeople in a room like this to actually sit and share and actually explain what they're doing in front of
They
clients.
just don't know why they're successful. I've met them here, they just don't know that the reason that they're
Well,
successful.
because it's intuitive. It's intuitive to them.
I do.
Because they would see the challenger research and high performers are like, yeah, But let me tell you, when we interview high performers, so what do? Sell? Like that's not, I need a little bit, it's one of the reasons why I had to do the research. Like the qualitative research wasn't really
They will
good.
say that they engage with their clients.
What's that?
They will say that they engage with their
Oh, they're
clients.
incredibly client or customer centric. Absolutely.
But not to make the client happy. They're
Yeah.
to some degree to push the client really out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
but if you ask them what they do, they'll probably tell you, well, I do engage with my client.
Yeah.
And that's probably what sets people apart.
Yeah. And a lot of them will take the 55-page deck and they use like 4 pages.
Yeah.
Or, there it is.
Like this is a deck that we see, we've covered, it's a financial services company, you all would know, disguised to protect the guilty here, and there's 55 slides of just dense information. This is the same deck that everyone is being given and used. The star performers have 3 pages in here they go to. Now, everyone else says, oh, the star performers are using that deck. So what do? They take the deck. And what do? Let me start on slide 1, give you our company overview. And they wonder why they're not as successful as the stars.
It becomes a script.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a terrible one at that. So, but to the bigger question of where it's coming from, it seems like in a good situation, in the companies that are getting it right, with Challenger and any of these kind of endeavors, it is a combination of sales and marketing working closely together
With market research.
with market research and often sales operations, if that function exists independently.
So what do you think is the biggest disconnect there? Is it like that the message is too real? Like that some of the salespeople are delivering that maybe not as marketable, like that's externally facing for on websites and for things that you maybe need to like make a little more shiny for more of the public consumption, or that there's just like a lack of alignment of like communication between the two groups?
There's a number of disconnects. So, and we were talking about this earlier, the origin of Challenger actually started in a marketing study. Realistically, and certainly CEB, and we have learned much, it has to be kind of a village to do this. You can't expect a new salesperson, any salesperson to actually come up. And by the way, a lot of you've talked about, like, I'm talking to multiple stakeholders and customers, and it's not going to be the same conversation or same pitch. So I basically have to be able to go into any opportunity, talk to 4 or 5 people. Research says now it's like 5.7
Yeah,
people in a
right.
deal, and I'm going to wow them with these amazing insights. I can't do that like when I'm doing 6 meetings a day. That's got to come from someplace. It should, right, be developed with marketing and hopefully really good market research to validate those insights, and it should be all brought together. The first big disconnect is those groups rarely get together, and also, your best salespeople are doing this intuitively. Organizations that want to challenge or be challenger, they can. They just need to get into the heads of those people and actually see what they're doing, but they're so elusive. And that disconnect is always big. And then what happens is you have high-performing salespeople like, yeah, challenger, got it. The average Joe is using the marketing material, and this is another problem. It's not an indictment on marketing that material is bad. It's the fact that marketing only gets to average salespeople. They don't get to the high performers. And so average salespeople complain about the deck. That's not the real problem. The real problem is the message that's behind that. And then to say nothing of market research, which is almost never involved in any of this. You know, we slide food under the table or under the door for those guys. They're off in an office somewhere. And you find your high-performing salespeople, your challengers, they have friends in very particular places inside the organization. Almost always they have some kind of mole in the market research teams that's helping them rig up material to change slides in that deck.
What % of companies have the higher person being in charge of sales and marketing versus 2 distinct?
Oh, I got like a CRO, CMO
Yeah.
versus someone that actually runs
Yeah, that
revenue.
brings it together.
It's not what it should be, certainly. I don't know the exact number.
I'm not sure. That's a trend. So chief commercial officer is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Underneath a chief commercial officer or a CX officer, customer experience officer,
Yeah.
you still have someone running sales and someone running marketing. So you just have a person that's one throat to choke for the 2 functions. But the functions are still siloed.
I want to shift it a little bit because this is a question that most of us in this room don't have any control over. Like, any of you be able to promote someone to a chief commercial officer position in your company? No, okay. All right.
Yeah, we got a volunteer there.
Okay. So the problem that JD is discussing here is that, gosh, to do Challenger well, we need all these people coordinating. The reality is, at least I assume for most of in this room, that's not something that's happening as well as it should today. And what can we do right now to help ourselves? And it goes back to this idea. Hopefully you all know your product well enough to know that it solves a particular problem. So Kristen, I'll use you just because we chatted a minute ago. What problem does your customer have that your solution solves? So, well, wedding planners, the problem is they're wasting a lot of precious time doing back and forth with a bride, trying to figure out exactly how the space should be laid out. And that is time that could be spent on better things, could be prospecting, could be building their business, could be doing other, like, this is a critical, if you're a wedding planner, you have very limited time, and it's precious, and you're wasting it. So that's the problem you solve. And I guess I could probably poke every single one of you in the room, and in 5 minutes, I could get you to be able to go, yeah, here's a problem that my product or service solves. So that's great. You've got, even if you haven't done any challenging before, you don't have anything from marketing, if you can articulate that and start a conversation around that with the customer, you're better off than, of course, starting off with, let me tell you about my products and services. So let me tell you, your wedding planner, do you find you don't have as much time in the day as you'd like? Well, let me talk about that. Let's figure out why that's happening. And you can, as Challenger spouses, lead them to start thinking about it differently. The other thing you can do, and this is, you get 15 minutes before the meeting, is go, okay, let me figure out, what do I want them to do? Is this that I want them to buy the product today? Is it I want them to introduce me to a senior decision maker? Is it that I want them to do a pilot? What is it I actually want to come out of this meeting I am about to have happen?
It amazes me that so many folks go into big critical meetings without really, without an objective.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Let's talk.
It's amazing.
And then the outcome is good meeting. Let's keep talking. Like, great, I'm happy to talk. Like, that doesn't really get us anywhere. Great meeting. Let's do the pilot. Great meeting. Introduce me to Bob in procurement. Great meeting. I'm procurement, so let's do procurement if we can. But this alone, going in, having the discipline of taking 30 seconds before a meeting, and what is the point of this meeting? What do I want to have happen because of it? And making very sure that before the meeting is ended, assuming it is appropriate, you have asked for that. Again, no conflict with Challenger here, but what it does then require is, okay, if I've taken 30 seconds to figure out the point of this meeting, then I need to take at least 5 minutes to start to think about, well, for them to introduce me to Bob, for them to do a demo, for them to do whatever this next thing is, why wouldn't they do it? What are those?
It seems like there's so much that gets stuck there, right? Because I'll tell you, I mean, it's happened to me, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting there in front of people that you think are engaged, and you just lose steam, and you don't know exactly why. Is it just they don't get it? What's going on there?
Yeah. It's because so the answer is this, which is, if you have taken a few minutes to figure out at least a couple of really critical potential objections, and or the flip side, what are the objections? They need to believe this is going to be easy. They need to believe it's going to have a return. The way we drive beliefs is with knowledge. If I want you to believe that this car I'm going to sell you is a great economic decision, I know you need to believe it's a great economic decision. What knowledge can I give you that will drive that belief? Well, I can talk about miles per gallon. I can talk about low repair costs. I can talk about high resale value. So this, once I have a sense of the beliefs, whatever they are, 1, 2, 3, now I know of all the things that I could talk about. This car was made in the good old US of A. Who cares? That doesn't support the idea that it is a smart economic decision. Now, if I know you're a union guy, and your big belief is you got to believe this car is good for the U.S. economy, right. Great, made in the USA becomes relevant. So if I've taken, I know what I need to do, I know what you need to believe, and I've got some hypothesis of all the things I could talk about that actually fit into the category of supporting those beliefs, great, except to your problem, your question, you're not engaged. And the problem with that is we tend to focus on towing capacity, miles per gallon, repair costs. It's all very left brain. Let me give you the facts. Let me give you the data. Let me create a very logical, analytical set of all the right reasons you should do this thing I want you to do.
Yeah, data. I gotta tell you, and I'm sure you've seen this with the clients you've worked with, where you do a demo, and it's the show up and throw up demo.
Yeah.
Where it's literally just, and you're going through a script, we were talking about before, it's just an orderly progression, and I call it the orderly progression to nowhere. Because you've shown a bunch of stuff. What does it really mean?
Data. So knowledge absolutely is data. We need data, but that won't do it. Human beings are not rational decision makers. If you've ever met a rational decision maker, I'd love to get to know them.
Yeah.
They are not. We are rationalizing decision makers. We make a decision based on a gut, based on emotion, based on feeling, and then we justify it based on the facts and data. Anyone own an Apple product in this room? Apple's genius at this. You ever go to the Apple store in Georgetown or nearby? Well, periodically, stick around for a while and watch. And every now and then, the geniuses, I use that term loosely, will walk around and they'll do this with all the laptops. Why do they do that? What do they want you to do?
Open it up. Mysteries.
Right, because you have to touch it. And they know that the kinesthetic centers of your brain, which are on the right-hand side, are being blown up. You're touching that brushed aluminum finish, and you're going, holy moly, something you're having a sexual relationship with.
You're going to go there.
You feel that friction hinge. They know.
Yeah. Sexy software back in the days. No, I saw CRM. I don't know if it's all that.
So it's not just data. You've got also how we call illustration, which is some of that right brain stuff, the visual, the story, the touch, the emotional moment where you say, you know what, Mark, I can tell you about this car's towing capacity. It's 2,000 pounds towing capacity. Did you know, you see that commercial, Toyota Tundra? What was it towing through the streets of Los Angeles a few years ago? Anyone remember this commercial? Toyota Tundra towing something, towing the space shuttle. I don't know what the space shuttle weighs, but I know it weighs more than my boat, right? I don't have a boat, but if I did, it wouldn't be as big as a space shuttle. That image, 3 years later, we still remember it, right? That's when you start to get beyond just the, let me give you the dry facts, data, the statistics, the technical specs. Let me tell you a story. Let me give you something that will light up your brain in a different way. So as we're going through this and thinking about what's the relevant knowledge, sure, what are those facts? But what's a good story, a good customer story I can tell you about someone, oh, let me tell you about this wedding planner, Carolyn. She was great. Her business was going along well, but she was struggling. She had actually more demand than she could deal with. And it was cutting into her ability to be as profitable as she wanted. But we worked with her. She's using our technology, but she has doubled. She realized she was wasting 50% of her time on useless back and forth with her clients around the space. We took that off her plate. She has now doubled her business. And guess what? She's just hired another person to take over New York and serve her well. That's a story. So then I can relate to that. I can relate to Caroline. So this idea of engagement and keeping people engaged is if you go data, you're going to lose them, and more importantly, you're not going to light up where they're actually making the decision, which is the right brain. You balance that in with some story. People love stories, visuals. You keep them engaged all the way through. Just one key thing, it's got to be relevant. It's not a story for a story's sake. It's not a picture of the space shuttle for the space shuttle's sake. It actually proves the belief that you're trying to drive.
That's what the high performers are so good at doing. They'll take that 55-page deck and they'll find the 3 pages that are relevant. So the company history, don't matter. The fact we have offices all these places, don't matter. Oh, here's an org chart. Awesome. Did you ever buy from someone because of an org chart? Good. You know, so they're really good at being precise. And if I understand those beliefs, and the brain likes 3s, what are the 3 most critical data points they would need to know to believe this? That's it, we're done. You should pull all the rest of that stuff away. So the next big thing, it's like a trendy word that we teach, but you're seeing it now in the blogosphere. It's this idea or concept of simplification. So Eli describes it as like a Jenga test, the idea that can I remove a component of a presentation or an argument if it still stands, leave it out. Right? That we're over communicated to. And the idea that, name that tune, okay, can I get to my point in the fewest number of words possible? That is so much different than what everyone else is doing, which is to show up and throw.
Now I want to be honest out. You got 15 minutes before a meeting. You can do all of this stuff. Totally not true.
Yeah.
But you can do part of it. You can take, if you can just take 15 minutes in the coffee shop before you walk in, and on a napkin, jot down what I wanted to do, what do I think, I got a hypothesis, what are 2 or 3 things they would have to believe to do this? And what of all the things I could talk about, the 2 hours, the 10 hours, the 60-page deck, all of that stuff, what are the 2 or 3 pages, or the 1 or 2 stories, or the really critical statistic that best supports that first belief, that best supports that second belief? Are you going to win every time? Absolutely not, right? But if you've started with a problem, so they're engaged, I know what your world is like, at least a little bit. And one of the beliefs is our product will solve that problem. And the other 2 are, it's going to be easy, or it's affordable, or your friends are going to love you if you do this, or whatever it may be. You have, again, use that 15 minutes in the best way possible.
And you can't underestimate how many problems you can prevent by having that conversation in the car. Because you're exactly right. You're in the car, you're going out to the client, it's like, we got 20 minutes, what do we want them to do? They don't know. If I actually don't know what the outcome's gonna be, like how, and then the worst thing you can do, especially as a challenger, right? The whole idea of insight selling is to disrupt a customer's status quo. I describe it as basically, they have a house, you paint shiny castle on the hill, and a challenger sale, you're effectively burning down their house. The worst thing you can do at that moment is say, so what are the next steps? Where do we go from here? Right? And we'll see this all the time. We'd be coaching challenger sales reps, and these amazing challenger pitch, and they're like so excited, and at the end they're like, so what are the next steps? You just burn down their house. They have no idea what the next steps are. You have to tell them what the action is. You have to know that, and if you don't, you're going to get another meeting.
It sounds like that's a key component, because when I read Challenger, I mean, that came out clearly. It's the sales professional's responsibility to drive the process forward. I think something that's happened too, as we talk about things like the buyer journey, is we seem to put a lot of power in the hands of the buyer, when maybe that's not necessarily the correct way of going about it.
If you're truly teaching the customer something about themselves they didn't know, they're taking that in for the very first time. And they're trying to process that, and then you're asking them what the next steps are. They have no idea. And you'll hear a lot of people like, isn't it so presumptuous of you to suggest the next step? Let me tell you, buyers, customers are like, how presumptuous of you to show up and not know the next steps if you're going to do that level of teaching and true engagement.
So at this point, any questions? Still absorbing.
So I have a question, as this would relate to team selling.
Oh boy.
Because it's really great when you're the only one in the driver's seat, but it's such a challenge when you have other people with you.
If you're a good challenger, you're okay on your own. But I will tell you, the most success for fastest adoption, if you can afford to do it, is a buddy system. That's the reason why there's 2 of us up here, right? Like the idea of having 2 people, because you also are processing in real time, right? You need a little bit of time and pause. You need to know, some people come in a little bit too hot on that challenger, and it's like, whoa, you're coming in a little bit abrasive. You gotta pump the brakes. There's a good cop, bad cop dynamic. There might be someone that's the specialist that can answer the hard questions. There might be someone that knows or has a particular relationship or can read people better. The buddy system works only if you prep. If you show up cold and it's like, hey, we're gonna do 30 minutes. I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna hand it over to you. No. Like when I was managing salespeople, 30 minutes, we know it's gonna start, this is in Australia, it's gonna start 7 minutes late. You're gonna go for 7, I'll probably go for 7. They're gonna wanna end 10 minutes early because they're gonna go get a coffee or get a beer in Australia. It's like, you don't have that much time. And you have to have signals, words. Like there were things I would do that would signal, and that has to be rehearsed and practiced and certainly talked about in the car. And that's where you get out the napkin or you got the notebook and you're like, okay, what do we want to do? And this is where the buddy system works, because the natural challenger is going to challenge and be fine. Your average Joe, like, really needs a partner to learn how to do this. This is hard. This is really hard to do.
Yeah.
Do you have like a specific situation?
Yeah, so I mean, like a lot of the times, like we do our product, it requires a lot of different people on board to say yes to.
Yeah.
Right, a lot, and they all have their own, everyone has their own area of expertise, and to kind of move anything forward, they have to be involved, because
This is more than 2 people. You're talking like a small army.
it's like sometimes like 5. It's like
10-legged sales call.
Man.
it's a lot. It's a lot of people, and it's just a challenge, because it's not like you're in a sales team. It's like it's not your rider, right? So it's like what are some systems?
So are those like sales engineers and?
Yeah, so it's sales. It's like sales engineers. It's it's product or like industry area experts and consultants. Sometimes
So can I
there's
just address that?
Yeah.
I would say you have to be the puppeteer, not the MC. So
Yeah.
you're, that 30 minutes of prep at a very minimum is you identifying what's likely to happen, what the critical questions are that you need to get asked and addressed, and you are running the show with putting, setting people on, not just announcing people's arrival.
Yeah.
right.
And it's hard. Literally, it's like you get 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like,
Or that you're fine to jump in and say, you know what, I think what I heard him say is this.
Right.
Can you address that piece of it for us?
Right.
Everyone plays a role. You
Well,
want
just-
to share something?
This is one, having some sort of a handout can help you. Now, you never espouse a 60-page PowerPoint deck, but just the idea of a handout of some sort, whether it's a 60-page PowerPoint deck or a one-page infographic, that this is when there has been some support. It's this is a big deal maybe. If you're having 5 people go in, I'm hoping this is not a $300 deal. You're sending 5 people and it's tens of thousands or more. I don't know, but that you would have taken some time to prep beforehand, and some sort of a handout that forces the conversation to follow. Like at the start, someone says, "Here, customer, here's this. We are going to walk through this." And it's well designed. It might be a PowerPoint deck, might be something simpler, but it kind of forces now if anyone starts to say, "Oh, well, here's an aside," it's sort of like, wait, this isn't in the table of contents here. This isn't in the flow. And it makes it a lot easier for at least one person, if you're the puppet master or the MC or whatever it may be, to be like, "Oh, interesting place we're going here, but let's bring it back to the document and keep working through it." So it's not a total panacea, but it will, having at least something that is a conversation guiding document helps keep things a little bit on track, because the customer starts to look at you funny if you're getting way off of it.
You're taking 5 people in. You think about what that is per hour, travel, the rest of it. What's at stake? I assume a lot's at stake. That really deserves a lot of prep with that group, and probably some type of role play and rehearsal and some guidelines. Again, like you said, puppeteer, you're running the show. It's like someone has to be in charge of that. Otherwise, that's going to be called the Banana Brothers. You're just going to be in there, and it's going to be a circus.
You're talking at me?
Yeah, who's talking? What do you mean?
Sorry.
There's the other piece of it as well, which is if there are 5 people involved, you're probably trying to solve too much in one call.
Yeah.
Right.
So what the goal, going back to what Eli was saying about the goal, if the goal, how do all those 5 people actually facilitate the goal of your interaction? And if they don't, then you've got too many people on the call, you're trying to solve too many things in one interaction, which then leaves you in a place where at the end of the call, nobody knows what the next step is. And you've shown up and thrown up, even if you haven't tried to do it.
And you've run over,
inadvertently.
and you've run over,
time
everybody's
and-
scrambling and dropping off the call, and you're left with nothing.
I want to
Okay,
bring
we'll
up.
get back to you next week.
I want to bring
Never.
up one piece of this, which is, there's the kind of right before quarterbacking of a meeting, but there's also a lot of the planning that goes on ahead of time. This is something I started to institute when I was doing a lot of larger deals, particularly at Siebel, because there's so many moving parts. For us, we're trying to sell enterprise CRM. And so there's product people, there's going to be the implementation team. We would have things like technical account managers, just a lot of different moving pieces. A good friend of mine, this gentleman by the name of Tim Sanders, just released a book that I think you should definitely check out. It's called Deal Storming, and it's a little bit of the combination of brainstorming when you have those challenges in a deal, and everyone's scratching their head like, why are we stuck? Right? So methodology to kind of get unstuck in some of these larger deals, but also a really good kind of methodology and some things to think about that are practical. in terms of actually getting everyone on the same page and understanding, like, what are we trying to achieve with the deal? What are the goals, the objectives? What do we need to do in terms of winning this particular large deal? So definitely check it out, Dealstorm.
Thank you.
I just happen to have it. I'm in the middle of reading it right now. So
Other questions?
yeah,
Thoughts?
be an open Q&A.
Feedback?
Otherwise, I could
More beer?
ask you like all sorts of questions.
Sure.
Right? Well, maybe as you.
I have one question. So in the prep piece, so there's the goal and the what are you trying to convey? What are you trying to get out of the interaction? For challengers, what are the most critical pieces of prep? Because if you talk to different reps, oh yeah, I prep for half an hour. But how they prep and what they prep and what they use that prep for is very distinct. So what do you think the 2 or 3 best ways for prepping to drive a challenger interaction are? If your marketing materials suck, you don't have the insight, what are the things that a challenger is looking for?
You have to understand the objections of the beliefs. Because what a rookie challenger rep will go in and they'll have, kind of like what they think is an awesome pitch, again, disruptive. So telling the customer something about themselves they didn't know, and they actually don't anticipate that question. Like you're designing a sales conversation that by its very nature is at some moment, whether very polite or maybe a little bit more rugged, there will be a moment of friction or confrontation. There is a realization of an insight, which is this problem you have, and the way you're dealing with it is wrong, right? And you go in guns blazing with that. If you don't understand what is behind the beliefs or the objections, if you don't know those questions or the answers to those questions, you just gave that person a samurai sword you're gonna cut in half. And whenever you would see a lot of people read the Challenger book and then they go out and they try to challenge and they come back in pieces because they didn't sit and think and spend the time that Eli said, what do these people need to believe? What are the likely objections? And if you can't answer or address those, you are completely exposed. And it is the most humiliating and embarrassing thing when you go in with those guns blazing and you didn't really think about it from the customer's perspective and you didn't know the questions they're going to have and you have no idea how to answer. Like that to me is the single biggest one.
So to turn that around as an answer, I think more specifically, customer research. If they are spending their time prepping, studying the customer, doing anything they can find, Googling the company, Googling the person, looking at LinkedIn, looking at Facebook, trying to find everything they possibly can out about whoever it is they're meeting, reading, and it depends on what the product is you're selling and who you're meeting with, spending every spare moment that they can afford to understand the customer.
Is there something that, just to interject, is there something that like marketing could do to just help? Because obviously there's a lot that seems to be, we're talking about the sales rep, the sales are doing a lot of these things, and obviously they should because it's them on the line, but ultimately you have a whole organization there that helps support these deals. So how can marketing better engage and also kind of flip that over? How can sales get better engagement from marketing, maybe share what they're doing in this process?
No, the companies we see that succeed at this are the ones where sales and marketing have come to the same table. And if it's not even a specific set of activities, it's that they're working within the similar framework. So that, and it kind of goes to the team selling thing, like before we go in to this particular meeting, let's make sure we're all really clear on the goal, let's make sure we're all really clear on the beliefs, let's make sure we're all really clear on the right knowledge to share to drive those beliefs. Lift that up a level to sales and marketing. If marketing knows or sales knows and they've talked together, what we need to be successful is a really clear sense of, for a meeting where the action is sign the contract with a client in the financial services industry, help us, let's collaborate, maybe deal storming, that might help with it.
Right.
Let's, using this framework of what are the common beliefs that we're going to see or run into again and again that we need to land, and what are the best pieces of data and illustration we could use to land those beliefs. If sales and marketing are both working within that framework and they understand that common language of know, believe, do, just having that, or whether it's spin selling, whether it's challenger, whether it's whatever, if there is a common framework and therefore a common language, everything works a little bit better.
If marketing and market research, so a lot of times, like the high-performing salespeople, the challengers, are kind of doing research on their own. They're kind of coming up with their own stuff, and so they're kind of, when they're in the meeting, they're not making stuff up, but they are asserting some things. The idea, if I could figure out what is it you're trying to say, what is the message you want to say, what do you need, that is perfect for a market research and marketing organization to be like, oh, that's what you're trying to say? Let us go get you some material for that. Let us go build you. That works, and also the marketing organization going to sales, I mean, like, what's working and what's not. And let's be honest, and now the hard part is, and be honest with me, right? Because I know you're not using that 55-page deck. So which 3 pages are you using, why? Like what works more often than not, and let's address that and make that more specific and sharper. Maybe market research can help us do that. But it has to go both ways. It has to go both ways.
Sometimes you prepare and you've got these questions that you're asking, and then your client doesn't have the answers. I mean, like, one of the things I'm now pitching to people is an AI version of prospecting, okay? And not only can you get better leads, but it's infinitely more efficient. But then you ask people questions. How much is it costing you per sale? How much are the SGRs? They have no idea.
Right. You have to give them the answer.
Yeah.
That's like the
Well, I
research.
do give them the answer, but
Yeah.
then what you, because we figured it out. But
Right.
then you tell them, and what you sometimes find, they don't care. Because one of the things I've learned, the more I talk to people, and this may be only in the prospecting space, I don't know, I'm not going to tell you what it applies, that often the people who are in charge of building the SDR organizations, they're really only interested in getting more people in their organization.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily
Well, it comes down to
looking at
like,
a more effective way.
It's not just in SDR world. I mean, I've seen this with HR tech, CRM world. I mean, when you're trying to get information that is not available, right? Or you're just talking to someone who's they look glassy-eyed. It's almost like, well, I don't know, maybe and you're not really driving because maybe they don't have any ownership.
And they have different objectives is what you sometimes figure
Or
out.
quite frankly, they got 99 problems and not even one. Right? There's a lot of solutions and a lot of products that we make that, quite frankly, when you put them in front of a customer, yes, it does solve a problem. That's really not a big problem. It's really not a big enough deal for me to want to solve it. And so you have to, through sales and marketing, make the problem that seems so small, which is, listen, that's the way it is what it is, I tolerate it, I don't need to get into your stuff. Like, I'm fine. To make it big enough. This actual piece that Eli's holding is a great example of a company that solves, at face value, it solves a problem, a really little, minuscule problem for the people they're selling to. And so their challenge was like, yeah, we solve a problem. It's not big enough. No one cares. Do you want to just?
Yeah. So this is a lighting company we work with that does smart lighting, smart grid lighting, not smart grid, just smart lighting, sensors, all that stuff. And this is their pitch to healthcare facilities. And they go in and saying, healthcare is a tough business to manage. When we talk about you, and in particular, you're spending more money than you need to on your lighting bill. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that would be the reaction. And that's exactly the reaction, right?
They said, but actually, it's like, oh, so you could save 10%, but I know you don't really care because that's this one tiny light item on one tiny section of your bills. Like, who cares? Guess what? It's actually bigger than that. Right? You run a long-term healthcare facility. Poor lighting can impact occupancy. Talking about how people actually choose a long-term care facility based on things like how it looks, how it feels, and the lighting affects that. Sure. Talks about how people who are over 65 years old require 3 times more light to read in the room, and 99% of your patients are over 65. Someone comes into your facility and they're looking to put their mother there, and they see someone else's mother like struggling to do the crossword puzzle. They're like, this isn't necessarily the place for my mother. And then they go, but it's worse. They say, but the problem is bigger than occupancy. And they start going into the fact that you're actually facing major liability. If your nurse misreads a patient chart because of the dim lighting, this happens 3.4% of the time in dimly lit rooms, there's a chance you're going to kill a patient because they're going to read 3 milligrams of Xanax or 300 milligrams of Xanax, and it was 3.00. Suddenly everyone's having a really bad day. You
Or a
kill
great
patient.
day.
Great.
So it gets into the liability issues, employee retention. Nurses quit after a much shorter time working in a dark environment. Performance drops. So suddenly this problem that was 10% on your lighting bill is suddenly like, holy crap, I could end up on the front page of the local paper for killing a patient. That's going to ruin me. And the nurse that got mugged in the parking lot and the patient that tripped in the stairs and broke their leg, like this is suddenly a major issue. Now I want to know, is this fixable? Yes, good lighting is great for business, first belief. Gray Bars, the name of the company, makes this really easy. Information on that. And this makes great economic sense. We can actually help you pay for this. It almost becomes cost
But you know what?
neutral.
You know what actually, to me, what that speaks to is it's starting to try and dig a little bit deeper at
Yes.
an emotional level, right?
That's
It's
right.
like the data, like, okay, so how many minutes do you SDRs spend on the phone, blah, 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 right? That may not, that's this is data
22
element.
minutes. I know what that-
And the actual,
But it may not be hitting the emotional
Yeah.
elements of why their job is so difficult.
Right.
And the script for that is actually a couple assessing a facility for their mother to retirement. But and then these facts are sprinkled in, but there's a line in the script where the 3.4%, whatever, how many beds do you have? If you have 100 beds, that means today, 3 people got wrong meds. And it's like,
That'll scare you.
whoa,
that.
yeah. I mean, see, that's a difference. Yeah, the day, 3.4, not too bad. Well, how many beds do you have? Oh, all of a sudden it's a big, and then there's a story
No,
that
that's,
goes all the
I
way
think
through
what
that.
you've done is fantastic. I mean, yeah.
Now, that just,
It's clever.
that wasn't created in 15 minutes.
No,
It was a
no,
sales
no, no.
conversation, that was done. That
No.
was sales and marketing working together, using the framework to come up with what's the right story that will resonate with someone running a long-term care facility. They've got a similar pitch for warehouses.
Mhm.
Warehouses, prescription medication dispensing error rate, what the heck are you talking about? We care about the guys on scissor lifts changing light bulbs 40 feet in the air and the risk of injury there. They have a pitch for retail. What do retailers care about? Sales per square foot. Guess what? Lighting is one of the biggest determinations of sales per square foot. So each pitch is different, modified, but that is sales and marketing working hand in hand to have done the research, to understand the segment, and build a slightly different pitch for each one.
So
Great.
towards the end of our time, I always end up with one last question. Because a lot of what we do from a sales perspective, it's a lot of it's mindset, motivation, getting through the hard stuff. So I always want to ask, is there a book maybe or some sort of resource that's been inspiring that just, or maybe just make you think differently that you'd like to share? I mean, obviously we've talked about a lot of CEP stuff, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it's something outside of it. Anything come to mind?
Gosh, most recent, the recency effect is of the book called Pitch Anything, which mostly I didn't find great value, but there was one section at the tail end of Pitch Anything that was just, talks about not seeming needy and realizing just how much I go into deals so clearly wanting the deal and not realizing how much that hurts me.
That's a really amazing insight, and that's actually something I've tried to teach entrepreneurs when they go pitch to investors, and that was actually, I think, the specific context of that.
Yeah,
part of
pitching
the book,
investors, yep.
Which is, when you flip the conversation around and you tell an entrepreneur, you really need to start thinking about the perspective that a VC or investor, they need to deploy money. And if they don't have someone like yourself, they're stuck with money.
Can't do that.
And they're stuck with investors who are saying to themselves, well, why do we put money into your fund if you're not investing in companies? And it's definitely changed a huge
But I do
mindset
think
for entrepreneurs.
one of the, I don't want to call it a trick, is to be really upfront and honest and to say to people, I think we can help, but I don't know, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
let's figure
We
it
may
out.
not be a
Because
good
I don't-
fit. It might
yeah,
not be-
because
it might not be a good
if-
fit.
If it's not going to work,
Yeah.
I don't want you to do it.
Absolutely.
The
Yeah,
classic,
that
don't
always
be
is
afraid to
so
walk
hard.
away,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and make that a gating factor. So that there's a balance. I think part of it was the balance of power
Yeah.
and how it gets unsettled because we get stuck in this buyer-seller paradigm, when in fact, it's not really buyer or seller. It's you're trying to provide some level of value that will raise the bar for someone that can use that particular technology or solution. So once you start to reframe that, and I've heard different analogies like student-teacher or doctor-patient, or just, but rethinking that paradigm, not thinking in buyer and seller. Once you start getting out of that mentality, you have a lot more richer conversations.
I'd mention it, so, the name of the night was, Challenger. There's a lot of Challenger stuff out there. So there's a lot of stuff outside of the CEB firewall, and quite frankly, the book to me is almost ancient at this point. There is a lot of evolution that is out there in the blogosphere on Challenger and life after Challenger. Now, if I do that, I'm also going to say the Oratium blog isn't that bad either.
Yes.
Our blog's pretty good.
We have a good one.
And I just read, there was a great sales guru in Australia, his name is Tony Hughes, and he was writing on the simplification topic today. I just saw his post today. And so he's a great guy. He's got some books out there too. He's a little bit more philosophical in his writing. It's almost like it's sales, but then it also kind of gets into life a little bit. But this idea and concept of simplification, he's one of the people kind of monitoring that trend. So the CEB Challenger blog, Oratium, and then Tony Hughes, if you got a chance.
What was your blog?
It's Oratium, O-R, yeah.
It's very small.
Yeah, very small, yeah.
We even really touched on Rod. Could you just maybe give like a 30-second?
You see what we just did there?
That's the 30
Lead to not with.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So yeah, we are a very small organization, founded by former corporate executive board CEB guys.
We are former CEB guys.
Former CEB guys. But it's this idea that we all communicate, sales and beyond, we all communicate all the time. We're trying to drive people to do stuff. Buy my product, donate to my charity, vote for my politician, marry me, whatever it may be. We want that's a recency effect as well.
You're still married at work.
Still married.
Yeah.
And what we have learned in the last 10 years about the way the human brain processes new information and uses it to make decisions actually kind of really cuts deeply into a lot of the conventional wisdom about how we should communicate and what our instincts tell us is the right way to communicate. So we as a company exist to teach people what's the brain science and the practical application of it, so that you communicate in a way that understands and aligns with the way the human brain actually wants to process new information and use that information to come to a decision. So we small organization,
Yep.
but
We're teaching a class in New York.
yeah, New York, March 15th, if anyone's interested. So, teaching the workshop. Thank you.
No, sure. Thanks for sharing. Just let's give a round of applause